Hello again. I decided to make another video about restoring helmets, as you can see, and it's a topic that is quite often covered on YouTube with a lot of different types of restorations. And I guess I just wanted to show what I think about this whole helmet restoration thing and what I would do or recommend to someone who wants to restore a helmet that they want to, for example, use or display. So I have a few examples here. Now what you often see on YouTube is people taking something like this. Let's set you aside a bit. Yeah, taking something like this helmet, which is very rusty, and it has a lot of pitting, and if you look at the rolled edge here, for example, it's pretty much gone. So what they do is they would fill up all the holes and try to reshape it, and take a lot of time doing it because it is a lot of work to try to get this to be smooth again, and then repaint it and put some average quality liner in there and rack up a lot of views. But what I think is way better to do if you want to restore a helmet and make it look like it, should do, is to take something like this. So this helmet was used post-war, and that's why it's in such good condition. I mean, if you look at the steel, there is no pitting or anything, apart from a little bit at the air vent here, but it doesn't really matter because it got rusty there. So yeah, this helmet was used post-war by the Czechs, and therefore it is a pretty nice candidate for restoration because there's still a ton of these out there, and you can sometimes get them for pretty reasonable prices too. I mean, I got this one for 65 euros. It's a Q64. Actually, let's have a look at the marking here, if it's going to focus and be in the light. Yeah, there we are, Q64 DN519. So yeah, that's this one. But I mean, usually these shells go for around 100 euros, at least in Germany, usually a bit more. Depends on what model and maker. But yeah, these late war Quist shells are actually pretty common to find, so they are probably among the cheapest. So this is one option. Another option is to get a helmet that was used post-war by a fire department, such as this one, and paint it over in black. I actually picked this up for a staggering 50 euros, which is pretty insane given that it still has a camo beneath. But this one still has original paint and a decal, and the camo paint, of course, so this is not a candidate for a complete restoration. This is just for paint removal. And you can also see that it still has the original liner in there with some modifications from the fire department. So these are kind of a different candidate for restoration, but sometimes these post-war fire department used ones were also completely stripped of any paint. Like this one was, for example. That was actually my very first restoration. This M42 by Quist. Well, the first attempt of restoration looked different than this, but it was the first helmet that I did restore, and this had some very thick luminescent paint on it, which was really hard to remove, and beneath that was a very stubborn layer of white paint. But I digress. I mean, the paint removal can be tricky at times. That's also why these Czech ones are good, because this paint comes off really easily. Though this one does have some tan paint beneath that the Czechs also added post-war for, I think it was some sort of export project to Egypt, which actually never happened, so they just stayed there and set in those depots. And another thing that is nice about these Czech reissue helmets is they often still have original liner bands, like this one. This came out of that helmet, and see if it's going to focus. Yeah, there we go. It's a nice little Schubert one from 1940. For some reason it's a 62 though, so they put a 62 liner band in a 64 shell. But yeah, that's what it is. And that's on the shells anyway, so I'd recommend you just use one of these post-war used shells and not a rust bucket, because it'll be a ton of work and the end result will not look as good as if you were to use one of these, because when you try to make it used and expose the bare metal on the rusty one, you will just see the filler and no metal. And here you will see the surface that you should see when you want the helmet to look used. So now that we've got this out of the way, we're going to talk about liners. And yeah, what I recommend, well, which is also convenient with the Czech ones, is they usually don't cost more than just a blank shell, because people don't really realize that they have an original liner band in there, but you can use the original liner band and put one of these reproduction rings in here, like this one, and a leather piece, and you now have a liner with an original liner band, which I pretty much do all the time now. For example, this one has an original liner band, I think it's from 1943. This one has one from 1942. And well, of course, since I make my own leather pieces, and well, I also do sell them, I have my own leather pieces in there with more correct markings, and it's nicer leather than on the reproductions that you usually get. This is actually goat leather and not, they usually use cow leather, which is incorrect, because that was actually never used. And there's also the typical Eastern European reproduction that has some pigskin leather, which was used, but not, you know, in the quality that they did it there. So that's also kind of incorrect. So I guess this is the closest you'll get without trying to market it directly. But yeah, that's why I even started making them, because I didn't really like the reproductions. So yeah, that's just that. And yeah, you can also see one of the reproduction liner bands that you can get. Obviously originals are better if you compare them, because they are obviously closer to the real thing. But I mean, they're alright by now. The quality has been improving. And now also onto split pins. What I like to use for my helmets is original split pins, because often you can get them with some other helmets or some rusty helmets maybe, and reuse them, like the early, let's see if we got one in here. No, that one's broken. Or like this one, for example, this is a steel split pin. You can often just reuse these if you're careful, because these steel ones tend to break very easily, which is very annoying, but it is how it is, because it's not very good quality steel. But there's also this one. Come on. Yes, this is a brass one, for example. These are a lot sturdier because they resist bending more, so well, breaking from bending, I guess. So that's also something that you can look out for. But there is good reproduction split pins out there that I would recommend. If you see them for sale, they're always marked DNC 1941, and they are definitely the best ones you can get. There's also the typical reproduction ones that are marked MSS 44, but they don't really get the shape right, so I wouldn't really recommend them unless you can't find the other ones. But the DNC ones are sometimes difficult to find. I mean, last time I checked they were sold out, unfortunately, but they are the ones I would recommend getting, and they actually come really close to original ones, because I actually compared one of these to one that was original and also marked DNC 1941. So yeah, no better comparison than to put it next to an original. So now comes the next part of a helmet restoration, and that is removing the paint. So we'll go on to that now.